Hey everyone, welcome to episode 6 of our webinar series for Game Changer Athletes. My name is Jake Worrell. I'm here with my colleague, Nolan Brunworth, as well as Tate, Brian, and Jacob, and we'll introduce these guys here in a minute. Just want to thank you guys for being here, listening. For those of you guys that registered, we hope to give you some great advice from our panelists, as they have a lot of experience. They work at a high level and train a lot of people. Obviously, Tate plays at a really high level. So some really good advice here coming tonight. I'm the executive director of Game Changer Athletes. Nolan Brunworth is our director of development. And we are pleased to introduce today's speakers. Brian Fitzmaurice. He is the owner of Fitzmaurice Performance here in St. Louis, Missouri. Jacob Buffa. He is the co-owner of Elite Baseball Academy in Chesterfield, Missouri, as well as a sports science analyst for the Houston Astros. And Tate Matheny, who is a AAA baseball player for Boston Red Sox. Before we jump into the program, a few things I wanted to run through. Today's webinar will be available. We are recording it. It'll be available on our social media links tomorrow. And if you don't have social media, feel free to email me, and I can get that to you once it's uploaded. Next, we'd love to hear from you during this presentation. We have about 9 to 10 questions that we're going to be asking Tate, Brian, and Jacob within about an hour span here. If we have enough time, we will get to those questions. If we don't, I'll be sure to send those questions to Tate, Brian, and Jacob to follow up afterwards. Next, for those of you that are listening, we'd love your support. Feel free to pull out your phones, look us up on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hit that follow and that like button. We'd love to keep you guys updated on the work that we're doing in St. Louis as we grow and impact sports programs, high school programs throughout the St. Louis area. So let's get started here. I wanted to give these guys a little bit to talk about themselves before we jump into the questions a little bit. So Brian, you want to start us off here? Tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, and how you got started with Fitzmaurice Performance.
I'd love to. Thanks for the intro, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here and join you guys in this discussion. Training has always been in my blood. It's my passion. From a young age with sports, being exposed to sports, that's probably kind of my first love was doing it to prepare for sport. Early on baseball, of course, transitioning to football, that was my love. So that's kind of my first introduction to training. My father's a sports chiropractor, so I was always around high-level athletes, professional athletes, so on and so forth. So I was exposed to that at a young age. So growing up, I was always around athletes. My father always worked on the injury side, helping athletes rehab, from injury. So I kind of, as I was getting older, I was deciding, what route I want to take in my education, so on and so forth. Deciding if I want to go, training route, or do I want to go more sports medicine or chiropractic route? And I decided I wanted to, basically hurt people versus fix people, So that's a joke, anyways. So I wanted to train athletes, I wanted to train people. So, that's kind of, really, I would say the biggest influence probably my father as far as me getting into training. So that was a big factor with me getting into the field. So started my business in 2000 with my brother Sean. So I've been at it a long time. My brother moved to Dallas, Texas about 5 years ago with his wife. So it's been full force, since 2000. Learned a lot along the way, a lot of ups and downs. I've had the privilege to work with thousands of athletes over the years, from youth to pro, everything in between, from swimmers to UFC fighters, and every athlete in between. It's my passion. I love helping people. It's very rewarding. It's very gratifying when you see someone get from point A to point Z. And I work with athletes that started training with us at early teens on to the highest level in college and pros. So it's really rewarding for me as I get older to see not just sport, it's about life when they're done with sports and how they, they grew from it, like that. So, so that's that. I'm married and I have 4 kids, ages 13 to 17. So yeah, so I stay busy training people and chasing my kids around. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Thanks, Brian. It's awesome. Jacob, what about you, man?
Similar to Brian, I grew up in St. Louis playing sports, really loved soccer and baseball, played it all through high school, went off to college at Missouri State, and after college is when I started Elite Baseball Academy. So I just really fell in love with the process of becoming a better athlete, becoming better physically, becoming better, and I wanted to share that with other athletes. Felt like I had some things that I could share with them and help like another generation kind of further their athletic career. So after graduating, I started Elite Baseball Academy in 2016 now with a partner of mine, Tate Matheny, and we specialized in, I guess, baseball development. It wasn't meant to be that way, but I guess just given our backgrounds, that's kind of who we attracted mostly at the beginning. And so we kind of ran with it. We took a very objective approach to performance, trying to relate everything we do back to on-field performance. So, I think there's one of the things that we wanted to do differently was, whether or not the squat or the deadlift goes up is great, but that's not always, the number one indicator for baseball performance. We wanted to do it a little bit differently and make sure we were measuring the correct things. So had some success with that, still going in St. Louis. And in 2019, I had the opportunity to join the Houston Astros. First was an on-field coach at a short season level, and then moved into the sports science role that I'm in now. So currently, my wife and I are in West Palm Beach and enjoying the weather, except for right now, it's like hurricane season. So outside of that, the rest of the year, it's a good time, enjoying it, getting back to St. Louis to help with the business anytime that I can.
Awesome. Thanks, Jacob. Tater.
Yeah, obviously, my story is a little different. I wanted nothing to do with the strength and conditioning training side of life, so I decided to do the alternative route. Born and raised in St. Louis. If any of you are from St. Louis, you're probably a Cardinals fan. My dad spent almost 10 years of his career playing or coaching in St. Louis. So, I feel like this has just been part of me for my entire life. Since I was a kid, this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to play professional baseball. I wanted to play in the major leagues. Still chasing that dream. Currently in Worcester, Massachusetts, playing in AAA for the Boston Red Sox. But yeah, these two guys that you guys are going to get to hear from a lot today are two people who have trained me pretty much my entire professional career. Two guys who have had to do a lot more work than they were prepared for, trying to get me ready, year in and year out. So I'm incredibly excited to get to hear what they have to say, other than yelling at me.
Tate, can you tell them where when you got drafted?
Sorry, I forgot about all that. I went to Missouri State University down in Springfield, Missouri. Was there for 3 years and was drafted in the 4th round. Out of Missouri State, and then went to. So I've hit short season for a year, low A for a year, high A for a year, double A for 2 years now. Then we had the COVID year. Now I've been AAA for most of the year. Had a little stint in double A again this year. But yeah, now I'm back up in AAA.
That's awesome. Family?
Yeah, wife and 2 kids, 4 and 1.5. They come with me. They're the real heroes of this squad. My wife is a true American hero, putting up with me and dealing with the kids all day long while I chase my dream. So without her, there's no chance I'd be sitting here today.
Yeah. Awesome. That's great. Thank you, guys. Nolan, you got the next one?
Yeah. You betcha. Brian touched on this a little bit, but I want to hear from all three of you, starting with Jacob. Talk a little bit about the first time you were exposed to weight training. Maybe it was as a teenager lifting weights in the garage. I'm picturing some sand-filled weights. I still have some of those, but that's a special experience when you start to realize you can kind of own your own training and development and get stronger. But I guess talk about your personal relationship with working out, with weight training, and with fitness, and how you got started. Maybe if there was a mentor involved, and then how you think it got to how you think it attributed to your growth to where you're at today.
Yeah. So actually, my first introduction to weight training would be in high school, probably as like a freshman or sophomore, and our baseball team would, on the rare occasion, go into the weight room, and at that point in time, it was a lot of shoulder exercises, forearm curls. It was not real intensive. We got to lift 15 pounds next to the football players who were power cleaning 225, and it wasn't a real great feeling. But actually, after I was done playing baseball, I've always been like really competitive, and my brother actually got me into CrossFit. That was probably my first experience with like real weight training. So I started doing CrossFit at like 20 years old. Got into that pretty heavily. Actually competed in that in Olympic weightlifting for a couple years, and eventually kind of transitioned into the sports performance realm. But I would say that it was really, really great finding CrossFit. Actually, I don't do it anymore, but it filled that competitive gap for me for a long time, and it really gave me something to focus on, especially in college. When you got a lot of free time on your hands, and that was something that gave me some structure, gave me a regiment, gave me some discipline, and really helped me out during that time.
Cool. What about you, Tate?
Yeah, for me, I think I kind of started like Jacob, not doing a lot in high school. We would lift every once in a while. I actually had maybe a weightlifting class my junior and senior year, just because it was something to do, something athletic to do, something to kind of further my career and what I thought it was going to be. At that time, I wasn't sure. I was playing baseball and ice hockey at a very competitive level, and I wasn't really sure which road I was going to head down. But for me, I didn't really start getting after lifting until I got into college, and then pro ball was a whole nother step. But for me, it was just having people around to push you and to make you better. I think teammates and coaches are great for that, and something that I don't know how long it would have taken me to figure out had I not had people pushing me in that direction.
Cool. Thanks, Tate.
Brian, any additional memories or thoughts?
Hey, I don't want to take up the next 45 minutes with my memories, but you said the sand weights. You guys don't know about this. DP, plastic, the concrete weights, man. So I had my dad get me a set. Now I'm talking like, guys, I don't know if you guys know what underoos are. Okay, underoos are underpants you wear when you're a little kid, right? So I had Incredible Hulk underpants. Okay, so I had my weights, I had my underpants, bro. I'm talking like 6, 7 years old. I got my weight set. I'd wear them when I'm pumping iron, bro, because I wanted to be Incredible Hulk. That's when it started. I knew I wasn't all right. It started then. All right. So
I'll do that.
It all started there, man, with the underoos. Okay.
Yeah.
And then it progressed into me getting more serious with my weight training. I probably started seriously at 12, 13 years old.
Okay.
And I'm kind of like a stereotypical meathead. So once I started picking up those weights, I never put them down. So I was really early teens, and I've lifted weights since then, right? So my love, like I said, was sports and training for sports, preparing to play football in college. That's kind of my thing. And then You know, and then after that, it kind of, you know, changed. I got more into like bodybuilding type training and powerlifting stuff and kind of just strongman stuff. I would, you know, like Jake, I would dabble in different things because I was, you know, looking for something to do, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, and you know, to this day, you know, I still train to stay healthy. I compete in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so my training, of course, is different now. It's a lot, you know, it's about longevity and injury prevention. But you know, it's always been kind of a love of mine. So I'm a little weird.
We knew that.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
That's why I'm here, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Jake.
So let's get into some, you know, some advice a little bit from your guys' experience. Tate, this question will be kind of geared a little bit differently toward you. But when should responsible, you know, weight training start, and what does that look like for, you know, obviously Brian and Jacob, you guys can talk about, you know, what programs you guys might offer for, you know, younger age group of kids or anything like that within your organizations. Tate, you know, mention from your personal experience, what's something that you'd maybe give advice to for an athlete at the high school level, or something that you would have done differently?
Yeah, I think. Oh,
Go ahead,
sorry.
Tate.
Go ahead.
No, you're good.
So yeah, for me, I mean, I think starting as early as you can is good. I think when I was a kid, I think the thing was if you start kids weight training too early, it would stunt their growth or something. I'm pretty sure that that's garbage. I'm pretty sure that that's not even true anymore. And with the
Wow.
trainers that you have today, you know, you've got two of them right here, and there's people all over. I think the sooner you can start to get into that habit of training, whatever it is, it may not be bodybuilding when you're 12, 13 years old, like the crazy man down there. But, you know, there is a way to pursue that career because I feel like sports are getting more competitive. Every kid is growing up wanting to be a big league baseball player or a professional, you know, football player, NBA basketball player. Everybody wants to be that thing. And so people are figuring out, okay, well, if I want to do this, or my son or my daughter want to do this, this is kind of the avenue I need to head down. So they're looking for people like Jacob, like Brian, who are in this field. And for me, I wish, you know, I don't regret playing two sports. I think playing two sports or multiple sports is very beneficial for kids, for their growth and for, you know, teaching athleticism and things like that. But I think finding time for the weightlifting programs, for the extra training is majorly beneficial. And finding people like these two guys can definitely help young people's careers. And I think they would know a whole lot more than me as far as on the weight training side. Maybe, like I said before, I don't think sitting a kid under 215 pounds on a bench press is going to help them a whole lot in their career and their life. But there is something that's going to help these kids to get bigger and faster and stronger.
Awesome. Thanks, Tate. Brian.
Yes, sir. Oh, you want me to chime in?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, your turn, buddy.
You know, it's a complex question, right? We look at movement literacy, right, from a young age. You know, I think some people think when they think about working with a performance coach, it's like, oh, you're gonna lift weights and all that stuff. It's not about that, you know. It's just about teaching kids how to move properly, right? A lot of kids, even at a young age, don't cross train. No, forget that. They don't play.
Mm.
They're not playing. They're not riding bikes. They're not jumping up creek beds. They're not wrestling. They're not roughhousing. They're not doing all these different things. Okay, so that's even before competitive sport. So a lot of your, you know, movement skills and, you know, abilities come from play. You know, so I think in the United States we have such a rigid, structured sport development program across sports. The kids lack play to begin with, and then they come in, you know, to a sport and they don't play a lot of different sports. They specialize at a young age and they don't know how to move properly. You know, so if I get a baseball player that comes in that's specializing, since they're, you know, can walk, well, you know, take them outside of the specific movements, and you know, they lack the athleticism. So a big part for us is teaching them, you know, how to move. You know, these are basic biomotor abilities, whether it's speed, agility, change of direction, just learning how to move. Where a lot of us learn that from a young age, just playing hot box or playing football or playing soccer or playing different things. Kids don't experience that now. They just don't. You know, they don't ride bikes because they're going to get, you know, abducted, or they're not going to play with Johnny. Or they don't roughhouse because their moms are going to yell at them. You know, so things are much different now. So when kids come in and they're 12 years old, 13 years old, they don't have that experience. So a lot of, you know, I think a lot of athletes from past generations have. So they lack some of that development from a baseline standpoint, from a foundation standpoint. So when you talk about athlete development, we look at, you know, progression of movement literacy, you know, through a spectrum. And there's different, you know, athlete development models across the globe, but it's kind of moving
Did you go out a little
from, you know, in Canada, they call it from like play to podium, you know, from your little kid playing, moving through that, navigating through that. And for us, you know, taking a young athlete, we tell the parents, yeah, you need to chill out, right? Step one, okay? We're going to teach your child how to move properly, how to run, how to jump, how to do these things, get stronger, get a good athletic base, but also understand we don't want to burn these kids out. So by the time they're 14, 15 years old, they're not even in high school, they're ready to quit. You know what I'm saying? We see a lot of that. So on the flip side, we want to teach them and give them the tools necessary to be successful at all stages of development. But also, we don't want them to you know, be in high school and not even college and they're burned out. And I've seen it firsthand.
Yeah.
So we want to give them the tools necessary for each stage to be successful, equip them to be successful. But also don't push them to the point where it gets a little bit excessive and it gets a little murky with a lot of things. And it comes from a lot of different angles from, you know, we're all guilty of it, I think, but, you know, trying to equip them with the tools necessary to be successful, and lead them in the right direction, but, you know, make sure it's level dependent with things, you know.
It's great. Awesome. Thanks, Brian. Jacob.
Yeah, and just to kind of like iterate over Brian's point, we begin offering performance classes as young as 8 years old, and there's no weight training involved, but there's a lot of sprinting, jumping, throwing, crawling, hanging, and it's really like it's semi-structured gameplay, and we really want athletes solving problems with movement. So if we can add cognitive perspective to it, we let them create their own games. We want them to be able to think about this and solve problems on the fly, because that's really like what athleticism truly is. Like when you see it, the innate athleticism is to be able to connect to like mind and body, and that's what we really want to get at a young age. And then at 12, 13, we start to introduce weight training. Can start with just body weights, but it's learning how to hinge, like learning how to deadlift, learning how to squat, because by the time they're 16, 17 years old, like we want to be able to put some weight on that bar and not have to worry about teaching them, you know, spend months teaching them technique, trying to get their hips to open up, do those types of things. So, you know, just like Brian said, it's like gameplay at a really young age, but I really like the term, you know, movement literacy. And then I would say like around 12, 13, you know, we start to introduce the weight training movements, and really progress as far as that athlete will allow us, you know, from physiological development, whether they hit puberty or not. We kind of take it one at a time from there.
Great answers.
Yeah, excellent advice. Thank you, gentlemen. You know, this is also interrelated, physical and mental. I know I'm preaching to the choir here. Let's talk a little bit about the mental benefits of a healthy athlete, the mental benefits of someone starting an exercise routine, and also the mental benefits to be gained when a young athlete does have to deal with an injury and have a disciplined approach to rehab and returning to their team. So start with Brian, just kind of dabble in that mental area for a little bit.
That's a big, broad kind of spectrum question, so I'll kind of break it down. I think you have to kind of isolate competitive versus non-competitive, right? So the basic benefits of exercise, we know, you know, physiologically, biochemically affects the brains, you know. So, you know, when you're engaging in exercise on a regular basis, you know, the depression is less, moods are you know, improved. confidence, esteem, all kinds of different things, just from a non-competitive standpoint. So, critical that everyone exercises. I don't care if you're competitive or non-competitive. But on the competitive side, training is all about, on the mental side is about, in my opinion, it's all about confidence. So you can't fake confidence without preparation. So we say, training builds training. I don't care if it's strength conditioning, I don't care if it's skill training, I don't care what it is, builds confidence naturally. And you can't fake it. We have a sports psychologist on staff. I work with a sports psychologist, world-renowned sports psychologist, but you can't fake confidence. Either you have it or you don't. You can psych yourself up and visualize, do all these things. But the reality is, if you haven't put the reps in, you haven't put it in, your brain knows you're not ready. So when you're at the plate, Tate's got, full count. He's going, I got this, bro. I've been there a million times. He knows in his gut, I got this. So I think that comes through repetition and through preparation. So, so on the mental side, I say that's a huge thing. On the competitive edge of strengthening and conditioning is you're preparing an athlete to perform their best, no matter what on the field. Yeah. So athletes know there's no way they can perform their best without being prepared with proper strength and conditioning. There's no way. If they're phenom athletes, they're doing great. If they're engaged in a proper strength and conditioning program year round, they're going to perform even better mentally and physically. But the mental side, of course, is very deep. And when you're delving into injury, of course, that's extremely deep question, because it's multifaceted. Acute versus chronic injuries and what goes on in the mind. But and I've been through a million times with athletes. It's very complex, and we have professionals on staff that help on that aspect. But we always say that with setbacks and challenges, that builds strength. There's no way to build strength without going through adversity and without going through times of trials that are very difficult. And that's I think for every athlete, it's inevitable you're going to get hurt. I've never worked with an athlete that's a high level of success that wasn't injured, whether it's a minor injury or significant injury, whether it's a couple of days or a couple of months or a year off. You're going to get hurt. But you try to prepare yourself appropriately to reduce the risk of injury. But mentally know that when you face adversity, face challenges, that you use it as an opportunity to get better. And that's the greatest. You've probably heard the term the gift of injury. Well, there's books on this stuff, right? That very smart, PhD sports psychologists have written that you could use it as a gift. You can learn a lot about yourself. You can learn it's an opportunity to grow and get better and get stronger, and your will and your ability to overcome difficulty improves rapidly when you use that period of time to grow and to evolve, through that. So that's what I always encourage my athletes when they're going stuff like that. Is like, hey, once you get through the initial part, like this sucks, okay? Well, let's get to the next stage. Like, let's use this to your advantage, right? How are we going to use it to your advantage? And that's what the biggest thing is. How are you going to take a step forward to always move forward and make this a better situation for you than to like, why me? This is terrible. But I don't want to dive too deep in that, but I know you're gonna ask more questions on that. But that's kind of a skimming the surface type of stuff with those questions.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian. Tater, or is it Jacob?
Either one.
All right.
I mean, I don't know if I can top that one. Yeah, I think, as far as the mental side goes, and in baseball, it can be tough. You see a lot of arm injuries or knee injuries or elbow injuries, whatever it is. I guess arm and elbow are the same thing, but it hurt. Guys battle it every year. It seems like it happens to somebody, some major injury. And as far as the mental side goes, I mean, it's a huge part of it. It just as bad, if not worse, than the injury itself, because now you got a guy looking at his career like, well, now what? Now what's next? I mean, who knows if I'm going to come back? Who knows if this surgery can take? The mental side of it is just as important as anything. And like Fitz was talking about, the rehab and everything else is incredibly important. And coming back from that, Those injuries, I've been lucky enough so far in my career to not have anything, that's taken me out for months on end. But from guys that I've just talked to and speaking with guys who've gone through that, the mental aspect of it is maybe the harder part. The physical therapy and all is great, but you get to see the results from that, and that kind of takes away from the mental aspect when you're seeing the results. Okay, now I'm out throwing again. I'm getting to see myself, or getting to see the ball fly out of my hand after it's been 6-8 months since I've been able to pick up a baseball. So, I think that there are tons of people out there, like Brian talked about, who specialize in this area. I am not one of them, in case you were curious, as far as the mental side of this goes, and trying to get back to it. But this, as far as the weight training goes on the mental side, I think it's really good for, like Brian talked about, I battled some anxiety in my life when I got away from weight training for a long time. And I don't know if those go hand in hand, but as soon as I started getting back into the gym, I felt like the things started coming back together in my life. Felt like that was one of the pieces that I was missing, was kind of the physical aspect of it. And getting back in the gym completely was a huge stepping stone for me, in getting back in the gym and getting my body under control again was a major help for me.
That's really cool. Thanks, Tate. There you go.
Jacob, any thoughts?
I mean, Brian and Tate did a great job. So, not much really new, but definitely, revisit Brian's point about the benefits from like a hormone perspective of weight training. When we exercise at all and lift weights, the body releases endorphins that actually help, like Brian mentioned, like improve your mood, decrease stress levels, overall just make you feel better. And then, one of the areas that I think is relatively not known is from a cognitive perspective. And there's actually research that shows that weight training will actually elicit structural and functional changes in the brain that can help us think better, think more clearly, be more spatially aware, improve our motor skills and coordination. And those are basically things that, obviously, from a young age, we want those to be good athletes. And then at an older age, like, we want those to prevent aging. There's never really a bad time for that. And then, as far as the mental side of rehab, I think one of the big benefits of weight training is confidence. I mean, that's, you have a knee injury, you get back in the weight room once you're cleared, and you begin to lunge, you begin to skip, you begin to squat. And, the moment that you can put some weight on your back and you can begin to trust that joint again, it's huge, because you get back on the field, and confidence is really confidence in that injury, that healing is really what inhibits a lot of athletes a lot of times. And then I think there's also, something to be said about just the way that athletes handle injuries. And, I know Tate said he wasn't an expert in this area, but I think he's probably one of the best examples I've seen in person of someone handling injuries really well. I remember in high school, for a period of time, the kid was walking around in a boot. And I'm not sure that he knew that the boot was on his foot, to be honest. He didn't really care. He was still out there. He was still doing what he could. He was still enjoying the game. And one of the few people that I've seen like take the boot off, and I swear he was faster. It didn't bother him. He did a phenomenal job with it. And I think there's a lot to be said about athletes that handle injuries in that way, because it can definitely be tough mentally for these guys.
Thanks, Jacob. That's awesome. Tate, what'd you wear a boot for?
I broke the sesamoid bone in my right foot when I was a freshman.
Oh, I do remember that.
I totally forgot about that injury too.
You were so slow. Holy
cow. I was slow. I was super slow. That was back when I was catching, so I had an excuse.
My dad always said you had concrete blocks on your feet when you ran down the base paths.
And boot fixed it right up.
Yeah. You're good now. All right, next one here. Getting back into the advice here a little bit. what advice would you guys give to, could be a teen athlete, could be someone that's older, wanting to get their life back together a little bit as far as some training goes. But how would they get started with training if they didn't have a gym membership? Could be financial reasons. How can they get physically fit, do things at home, programs that you guys offer, things like that. Just some advice on how to get started. And then in addition to that question, so it's a two-part question, to a college athlete, what adjustments are you trying to make in your weight training to make a jump, to the professional level or whatever the next level is to take yourself to that next level. So kind of a two-part question here. So Jacob, we'll start with you on that one.
All right. Judging by Brian's answer on how he got started in weight training, he might have a better answer to this than me. But I would say just in general for someone that's getting started at home, I think it's whether it's an athlete or someone who's just trying to stay healthy, it's probably useful to oversimplify training and basically take it down to like two components. And usually when people start strength training, it's either to get bigger, or maybe to get more explosive. And if we want to get bigger, then we're basically looking at time under tension. So that can be higher rep ranges, that can be longer, slower tempos, making sure you're counting, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as you go through the movement. And they can be very basic movements. They can be lunges, push-ups, anything you can find. And then if you want to get more explosive, it's about moving as quickly as possible. And that requires, no weights at all. That can be jumping, sprinting, throwing, very like athletic type movements. And I would say, those can accomplish a lot from a general fitness standpoint, from a conditioning standpoint. It doesn't need to be super fancy. And if you're lucky enough to have some cinder block weights that you can throw around in the garage, and that's even better. And when looking at like a college athlete, the second part to that question, an athlete looking to make a jump from college to professional, I think from there, the number one thing that we think about, assuming that they've been training, for a while, is we think about specificity and workload. So generally, as athletes progress through their playing career, they need to get more and more specific with their training. So whereas younger athletes were maybe doing a bunch of different things, maybe doing 8 different exercises in the workout, doing sprints, running, everything like that. We may back down the exercise selection to, 4 or 5 and make those targeted for what they actually need, push the weights a little bit, just make it more specific to their sport demands. And then from a workload perspective, as they get closer and closer to the professional ranks and through the professional ranks, actually practicing their sport as a skill becomes paramount. It becomes even more important because it takes more to get that 1% edge as you climb the professional ranks. So we need to make sure as strength and conditioning professionals that we're structuring their training to coincide with that. So there are times that we can be very aggressive with their lifts, and there are times that we need to maybe taper and back off and choose our spots because they've got a lot of practice coming up, or they've had a busy week on the field. So I think specificity and workload are probably the two things that change the most as an athlete looks to make the jump to professional ranks.
Awesome. Thanks, Buff. Tater.
Yeah. For me, the advice I'd give to somebody who doesn't have necessarily a gym membership or a place to go work out is I feel like, or I think you can do it as just body weight things. So squatting, push-ups, sit-ups, find a place, a door frame where you can just do pull-ups, something to get your body going as a young kid. Really anything to get going. And kids are like Brian talked about earlier. It's not so much kids aren't going out to just go play baseball or wiffle ball in the backyard like we did when we were younger, go shoot hoops or whatever it is. Kids are inside playing video games or doing a lot of different things, which is fine. But if this is what they're striving to do, if this is what they want to pursue, finding a way to carve out time in the day to just go do pull-ups or push-ups or sit-ups and do something is incredibly beneficial. And then the other part of it, the college athletes turn into professional. I feel like for me in college, the only thing I wanted to do was look better, was to make my chest bigger and my arms bigger. That was it. That was the only goal of me working out. Nothing more. And then all of a sudden, I'm blowing my back out trying to squat 135 pounds because my body has no idea how to move with weight on its back. So injury prevention becomes incredibly important because you're playing 54 games in college and you're playing 140 when you get to pro ball. And I had a coach once tell me, you don't know how hard playing every day is until you're playing every day. Playing every single day is tough. And it's awesome because, you take an 0 for 4 on a Sunday in college, you got to wait till next Friday to get your revenge. Where now in pro ball, if I take an 0 for 4 on Thursday, I get to show up tomorrow night and stick it to the next guy. That's the great thing about it. But in order for that to happen, I have to find a way to stay healthy, find a way to stay on the field for as many games as possible. Yeah, little things are going to come up. Aches and pains are going to happen in a season, but you have to find a way to make the longevity of the season happen for you. Try and get as many games as you can under your belt and stay as healthy as long as you can, because the healthier you are, the more opportunities you're going to get to play and to get to go out there and prove what you have. And obviously that's the goal, is to move up from level to level, and to make that jump to the major leagues someday. And in order to do that, you got to stay healthy. You got to stay healthy and you have to perform. Those are the things that have to happen. And that happens in the weight room. What you're doing in the weight room, and it's hard. It can be hard to do that by yourself. For me personally, I find it hard to just jump up and go work out, and especially because I don't know what I'm doing. That's what these guys are for. These guys know what they're doing as far as that goes, and being able, and there are people who can do it. You can find it on the internet. I know my brother does that. He just finds stuff sometimes on the internet. Oh, this looks good, I'll do that. But as an athlete, and when this is now your job and your livelihood and your family's livelihood, I would advise you to find somebody that knows what they're talking about, who's going to not just make you look gigantic, which is cool and all, but when you're sitting on the shelf, or on the training room table all year long because all you did was bench press and bicep curls, it's baseball's not as fun when you're just watching it.
Awesome, Tate. Thank you.
Yeah.
Fitz.
Good stuff, guys. I'll go out on a limb and say this. Get professional advice. Seek out a degreed and certified strength and conditioning specialist like Jacob or myself that can advise you what to do. Even if you're not going to come train, with us, most strength coaches, that are educated and have a good experience do distance coaching. So I write programs for, coaches in different states or whatever, or, I have tons of different guys that I'm working with. So they'll get you on the right track. So you could spin your wheels doing different stuff and doing P90X or downloading whatever YouTube video. But the reality is sometimes you understand that there is a risk of injury of doing bad training also, the improper training. So I would say at a young age, you could have fun, play, like Jacob talked about. That's important when you're young. But when you're getting to be, later teens and through middle school, getting ready for high school, it gets a little more serious. So if you're waiting till you're 16 years old to get serious, you're gonna get passed up because we have kids that are from a college recruiting standpoint that are committing at sophomore year. So seek a professional strength conditioning coach. They'll get you on the right track. A lot of times it doesn't have to be that serious, but understand if you want to be an elite athlete, I use that term loosely, but if you want to play at the next level and be the best of the best, top 3 to 5% of all athletes, then you're going to have to take training seriously. It's not non-negotiable. You have to do it. So the best athletes train year round, and that's what you have to do. So we say training is not a one-time thing. It's not a sometime thing. It's a year-round thing. So we say, a big part of what I do as I get older is educating athletes and coaches what you have to do, right? So an athlete has to train minimally 100 training sessions per year, minimally. So that's an average of, 2 workouts a week. If you dip below that, you're not going to progress. Okay, so even at a young age. So we have 12-year-olds that are working out twice a week. Okay, as they get older, it changes. Like Jacob talked about, when you're getting older, you're looking to make that jump to, you know, a college or a pro level. It gets a lot more specific. All right, but at a young age, we're focused on basic athletic development and, you know, motor skill development. So get on the right track with a right program and having the right mentors and the right coaches helping you. Dude, your results and your productivity is going to be 100-fold, you know? So, you know, a lot of the athletes, I'm sure Jacob said the same thing. You work with these guys for years and years, and girls years for years. So they trust you. You know, we're in their corner to tell them, you know, I have some kids drive 2.5 hours to get here. I had a you know, kid that drove 2.5 hours looking for the right advice. They can't find it. So I think finding somebody you could trust that's going to get you on the right track, not only from where you're at, but through the stages of development you want to get through. And as far as going to the next level, whether you're, you know, no matter what the sport is, making that jump, I'd say my message is the same. I don't care if you're 12 years old or a pro athlete. You know, that may sound funny, but it's just ramped up a bit. You know, same questions I'll ask my 12-year-old, I'm going to ask the pro athlete. Hey, what time did you go to bed last night? What'd you have for breakfast? What'd you do for your recovery? Did you get the corrective in? Did you get the stretching? Did you do that? You know what I'm saying? Same questions. Who would think that, right? Because guess what? The pro athlete needs accountability just like the teenager. You know what I'm saying? So, but as far as from the scientific standpoint, like Jacob said, it gets a lot more in depth as far as science goes, and specificity, and you know, analyzing and balancing all the different variables, you know, at the you know, pro level. But it's a lot of the same variables. It's just, you know what I'm saying? But you know, I always say the human element is real, and that's true from 12U to pro. You know, it's about coaching athletes up, leading them, but also holding them accountable to their goals. You know, we're a cheerleader, but we'll also crack a whip on you. Hey, let's get after it. You know, so I think you know, across the spectrum, a lot of it's the same. But like Jacob said, it's going to get a lot more specific, and it's get a lot more scientific as it progresses through to the upper levels. You know.
Thanks, Brian.
That's great, Tim. Hey, Jake, these guys are doing such a good job answering questions that they're answering the next question. I want to call a little bit of an audible here and skip the next question. And then I want to dive just a little deeper on injury prevention. If maybe you guys can share any, and I know it's kind of a challenge because you're talking about different sports and different age groups, but just injury prevention techniques, whether it's looking at, you know, pliability of muscle strength, whether it's you want to dive into nutrition a little bit and talk to us a little bit about that. But let's focus on injury prevention throughout the year and maybe some healthy best practices that anybody could be doing. Let's start with Jacob.
All right. Yeah. So, like you said, it's kind of a big question, but I'd like to try and tackle it from like the most simple perspective. So when, like, as far as, you know, what exercises or what programs, you know, we choose for injury mitigation, you know, that's really going to depend on the demands of the sport. But I would say in general, like, our goal is to make sure that the on-field load doesn't surpass the athlete's physical capacity. And that could be either a chronic load or an acute load. So like from a chronic load perspective, that's like an overall accumulation of workload. And that's making sure the athlete's body can withstand the demands of their sport. So that's swinging, throwing, running, jumping. There's, you know, if it's soccer, you're going to have to be able to sprint and run X amount of miles in a game without your hamstrings blowing out. If it's baseball, you're gonna have to be able to take X number of swings without your obliques blowing out, or throw the ball X number of times without your shoulder blowing out. And that's where, from a chronic perspective, we try and condition the athlete to be able to withstand the workload of a season. From an acute perspective, or just from like an instantaneous perspective, we want to make sure that the athlete's body can withstand the forces that are going to be put on it at any point in time. So whether that's maybe change of direction, maybe that's constant landing if you're playing volleyball or basketball, and again, maybe it's the forces on the shoulder for any specific throw during baseball, whatever that is, we want to make sure that the athlete's body can handle those forces. So, for us at Elite, that's where we use force plates to try and identify how much force athletes can produce, how much they can withstand, and we want to basically improve those capabilities to mitigate acute injuries. And then hopefully, like on-field practice with their teams, going outside and playing is where they can build up that chronic workload to help mitigate injuries.
Excellent. Thank you. Tate, any thoughts?
Yeah, obviously for me, this varies whether I'm in season or out of season. In the off season, weight training is pretty much my primary focus. That and working on my swing, making adjustments. So in the off season, I'm pretty dialed in on trying to get bigger, stronger, and faster, and to really push my body to that point of being able to get into shape, get stronger, get faster, and to start to build up that longevity for next season. And in season, for me, all it is maintenance, is keeping my body strong as opposed to just letting it deteriorate over the season. Not just going out playing baseball, coming back home, sleeping, and doing that every single day. And what we're doing now is we lift every day. We do a small 10, 15-minute lift every day to maintain what we've done in the off season. Whereas in years past, we may lift once or twice a week, depending on the week. Some weeks are what we would call like deload weeks. And it's pretty much just getting in the gym to breathe air and leave. And now we're doing something every single day, which I feel like has been really beneficial for me as just to get up and to do something, to get my body active for the day ahead. And I feel like it's been super beneficial for me to stay healthier this year. I feel a lot better. I feel like I have a lot more energy come what's getting ready to be August. And so now I'm ready, and it's been really good for me this year. And obviously, so all that to be said is it just depends for me what time of the year is it. Is this the time of the year where I'm pushing my body to the limit and trying to get stronger, or is this the time of the year where I'm just trying to maintain and keep myself ready to play night in and night out?
Tate, if I could ask you a quick question. Obviously, you've been healthy for majority of your professional career. Can you talk just a little bit about kind of like maybe just your nutrition a little bit, or Brian mentioned like maintaining like your recovery, like how you're doing in and out of each day as far as your sleep and your recovery of your body?
Yeah, so I'll start with nutrition. Obviously, it depends, because when I'm at home, it's a lot better. My wife is very dialed in on the nutritional side of things, more so than even I am, even more so than I'd like to admit that I am. So it's a lot easier when I'm home because she's normally making me 1 or 2 meals a day, and I'm normally only eating, depending on what we have at the stadium, maybe just 1 meal at the yard. So, and then if we're on the road, it's obviously a lot tougher, this last week we're in Pennsylvania. So I either have to like get up and walk somewhere to eat, which to be completely honest and straight with you, the closest place to within a mile of us was the Waffle House. So that was breakfast for 5 days this past week. So it obviously depends on where I'm at, and obviously that can be tough. Some other places you can order, we do a lot of ordering food in. So as far as like DoorDash and things like that. So it's trying to find something good that's going to get you throughout the day. I'm not ordering McDonald's in the morning. I'm not ordering 20 McNuggets before my games, or else I'm going to feel like garbage for the next 3 days. I may have been able to pull that off when I was 18 or 19 years old, but that doesn't sit well with me anymore. And then as far as rest and sleep and goes, it can be hard to unwind after a game. You're playing in front of 6, 8, 10,000 people in really bright lights, and the adrenaline's going. It can be nights where you're up to 1 or 2 a.m. just trying to unwind and get yourself in a position to be able to fall asleep. And sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes you just lay there and toss and turn, and you're battling whatever it is mentally, thinking about tough night, or on the other side, you had a really great night and your adrenaline's pumping even more, and now it's hard to go to sleep because of that. So for me, it's trying to find a routine that works, something like get in bed at this time, start unwinding, and then everything turns off, and then I have to be asleep by this time, like, or else I'm gonna feel like garbage the next day. So it's trying to find a routine for me that works, and that's been a big thing for me this year.
That's great. Thanks, Tate. Brian?
Kind of touching back on the injury, reduction, injury prevention. Everyone uses the term injury prevention. Really, you can't prevent injuries 100%. You just can't, right? Injuries going to happen. So we try to do take proactive measures to try to reduce the rates of injury. Like Jacob said, injury mitigation, just try to reduce the risk, right? And research shows that a proper strength conditioning program with strength, plyometrics, good stabilization protocols will reduce injury. So 2 keys we look at are joint stabilization. These are really the 2 keys to injury prevention. Joint stabilization of your ankles, your knees, your hips. So your spine needs to be stable. Core's got to be strong. Hips got to be strong. All the muscles that surround and stabilize your knees and your ankles. Okay, and then it depends on if they're throwing athletes or not throwing athletes, right? So for baseball, softball, volleyball, then they have to have good stability around the shoulder girdle. So we have to have adequate and balanced musculature to stabilize the joint. That's one, right? But also we look at the tissue tolerance of not only the soft tissue, like the muscle tissue, the fascia, but also tendons and ligaments. All right. So through progressive strength training and plyometrics, strength training alone is going to increase the durability of all the soft tissue. Okay. So once an athlete's stable, like you say, and they look at a force plate, see if they have an imbalance like that. You're working on an athlete's stability. Once they have good stability, then we have to work on building out the structure, like building a home. We have a good foundation, and we got to build the first floor, second floor, third floor, whatever. So that's where strength and plyometrics comes in. Okay. So once you're working on what Jacob touched on, time under tension, stuff like that, that's going to increase the tissue tolerance of muscle and fascia. Okay. So an athlete that strength trains is going to have reduced rates of muscle strains, tears, and stuff like that. Okay. Secondly, when you talk about like ACL prevention or ankle, injuries like that, throwing athletes is a little bit different animal. When you talk about chronic overuse or imbalances like that, it's a little bit different with some of this stuff. But when you're talking about like contact versus non-contact, ACL prevention, when their hips and their core is stronger and they're doing plyometrics, jump training, if you don't know what that is, increases the tensile strength of your ligaments and your tendons. Okay, so tensile strength is what kind of load those ligaments and tendons can take without rupturing. Okay, so research has shown that an athlete that does strength training year round, incorporates plyometrics seasonally, will increase the tolerance of a lot of this, how much load it could take. Like he touched on also, force absorption, force creation. Okay, most injury occurs when an athlete is absorbing force and can't adequately absorb the load fast enough. Okay, or they haven't trained out of those load absorption type of movements. So that's where an athlete has to be able to produce force, but more importantly, an athlete has to absorb force. All right, so that's where once they're stable, they have to learn with plyos to learn how to land and absorb, because that's usually from a lower extremity standpoint, that's where a lot of injuries occur. Upper stuff, like with hitting like throwing athletes or volleyball players where they're hitting, a lot of that comes from imbalances and lack of stability in the shoulder girdle. So it could be repetitive use of weird motion, or it could be just, it could be postural, it could be imbalances, a lot of things you have to attack to make sure. When I say stability, it has to be global, where they have good balance and musculature 3-dimensionally, so the body's in balance. So if they have improper balance, that's going to create, faulty movement pattern. Their biomechanics are going to be off, and that's going to lead to chronic stuff. So from a basic standpoint, they have to be stable, they have to be strong. You want the athlete to be durable. But then from a high level standpoint, you get athletes that have been training and doing all these things, but they're still moving funny. So then that gets back to a whole different ball game of working with, mobility and flexibility stuff and corrective exercise, and then re-educating their body. Tate's laughing at me. Quiet, Tate. You're not being a good co-panelist.
You've been through all this stuff. I just think it's
So
awesome.
we call it neuromuscular re-education. So we have to re-educate an athlete's body how to move properly. They're already strong, they're already stable, they're already all this stuff, but they're just moving funny, like Tate does. So then you have to train their body how to move right. I'm done with that.
That's a great fundamental explanation, and I think a lot of the people listening can start to use that analogy that you mentioned, the foundation and then the other layers of the house, and it really does make sense. And obviously you can dive super deep into that, but I just think that's good fundamental explanation. Jake, what's next?
Yeah, I think for our sake of time here, one of the questions I really wanted to jump into was one of the last ones here, and if we have enough time, we may do the last one, but we still need to announce our gift card winner here at the end too. So, but one of the ones that I liked here is kind of on the parent side of things. How can parents best support their athletes' personal fitness and athletic journey? I think that's a lot of stuff that we preach on here at Game Changer Athletes too, and we wanted to get some of your guys' input on things like that. So we'll start with we'll go Tate, Brian, and then Jacob.
Yeah, I mean, as far as what parents can do is, I don't know how to phrase this, but is to just help point them in a direction, right? It's not being the parent who's saying, "Did you do this today? Did you do that? Did you?" That's Brian touched on this a little bit earlier. That's how we run kids right out of sports. You over pushing kids, and then that either creates tension between you and your child, or your child in that sport. And so, and that's what we're trying to avoid. We're trying to do the opposite of that. We're trying to get our kids to love the game, right? And to get them in the best possible position for them to succeed in whatever they're trying to do, whether that be golf, baseball, football, soccer, basketball, whatever it is. And so as a parent, I think if your kid approaches, or if your kid tells you, say, hey, I want to do X, I want to play this sport, this is what I want to do, I want to see if I can pursue it. Okay, well, let's look into finding you a trainer, let's into finding you a coach, and finding the best possible options, two of them being on this screen right now, and helping them get into those facilities, but not forcing them in there saying, well, you're going to be a Major League Baseball player. Well, how do you know your kid loves doing that? If they tell you they do, then we're having a whole different conversation. But just helping your kid find the best possible coaching, I think that's the best way you can help them.
Thanks, Tate. Brian?
He hit the nail on the head. I don't much to add. His dad wrote a book on this stuff. It used to be the term is helicopter parents. Now they call them lawnmower parents, right? Lawnmower. I didn't know this. One of the principals, kids I trained, lawnmower. So number one, kids have to have the desire, right? Once they have the desire and they come to you and say, hey, Dad, I want to, be a professional baseball player. I say, okay, like Tate said, we could get you some lessons, at here, and get you some hitting lessons. They get some, lessons, and then, if they want to work out, say, hey, yeah, okay, I hear, Elite or Fitz does good stuff with athletes. We can talk to them. You know what I'm saying? But like, don't try to be their coach. I don't coach my kids, and they're getting older now. That's a rule. You will ruin the relationship with your kids. Don't try to be their parent and their coach. Don't coach your kids. Let the coaches coach your kids. No pregame stuff, no postgame stuff. That's a whole different topic. But like Tate said, find someone that can coach your kid up and be a good a person in their corner to get them on the right track. Seek them out and let them coach. The best parents I've ever worked with, day one, they say, we trust you. Here's our kid. I'll see you back in 10 years. Literally. You know what I'm saying? Never called me, never text me, never nothing. Hey, what Coach Fitz said. That's what he said. I'm saying the same stuff the parents saying. You know what I'm saying? But it's coming from me, so I'm the expert. So get a coach to help your kids out. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's in lessons. I don't care if it's in strength conditioning. I don't care if it's in anything. Try not to be your kid's coach. It makes things weird.
Great advice. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah. I think, Tate and Brian absolutely nailed it. And like Brian mentioned, Tate's dad wrote a book on it, and they have a organization, a baseball organization that does a phenomenal job and with the St. Louis Warriors that I think I'd have to take pages from the book to answer this question. And that it's a very difficult thing to do, but I think the best thing that parents can do is be present. They need to be engaged, but they can't be smothering. And the best way for to kind of iterate this is when people realize that it's the kid's journey. Like these athletics, it's the kid's journey, and they need to go on this journey, and they need help. Like they need to be helped along this journey, but they don't need a voice speaking for them. And that was one of the things that I think my parents did really well with me. And one of the great takeaways that I had from sports is when I had a problem with a coach, like I could complain to my parents, but my dad told me, hey, like go talk to your coach. I'm not going to go talk to your coach for you. If I had a problem with a team, my parents did not let me quit that team. They said, you had a commitment to this team and you will stick it out. And if you want to revisit at the end of the season, that's fine. But I see all too often kids quitting because their team is losing or because they're not getting enough playing time. And that kind of takes away like the largest advantage that kids will gain from playing sports, because not everyone is going to reach the level that Tate has reached. There very few people will ever reach that level, but the journey along the way can help them become better executives, can help them become better employees and better parents down the line. So that's just to touch on again, like how Brian and Tate mentioned, like help your kid, stand beside them in this journey, but like don't stand in front of them, don't talk for them, allow them to speak for themselves.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Jacob. We're gonna probably end it right there, just for the sake of time. We're over our hour time limit, but a lot of great advice. Thank you guys so much for Tate, Brian, and Jacob. I think you guys hit the nail on the head on all those questions we asked. And it's great stuff. It's great stuff. So I got one more thing here. So when people registered for the event, we got close to like 20 people that registered. They entered into a $25 Smoothie King gift card. So I am going to pull it out of my hat here. Let's see who wins here. Hey, look at that. Nolan, one of our board members, Jim Enright.
Is Jim eligible?
What does
the fine print say?
We'll pull another one. One. Sorry, Jim. I'll treat you to some golf this Friday.
I'll take care of Jim.
Yeah, there you go.
I'll get his Vanilla Gladiator next week.
Oh, cool. Scott Harris. So Scott Harris is the AD at Francis South Central. So congratulations, Scott. Thanks for registering and being part of our event tonight. Tate, Brian, Jacob, thank you guys so much.
Thank you very much.
Awesome, guys. Much appreciated.
Right, talk to you guys soon.
Yep. See you.
Yeah.
See you guys.
I don't know how to leave this thing.